2 in our multi-channel communications webinar series. If you were here last week, we went over the multi-channel study that Virtuous published with our partner NextAfter. In part 2 today, we're going to look at how to implement multi-channel communications at scale. I'm your presenter today. My name is Jeff Jacobs. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Virtuous. And I'm actually going to be joined by two of my coworkers, Brian Funk, a marketing manager. He's going to be going over a little bit of responsive fundraising and a little bit about the study that we learned about last week. That's going to be followed up by some time with David Cady, the Chief Revenue Officer here at Virtuous. So for our agenda today, like I mentioned, Brian's going to be going over responsive fundraising, what that is and how it relates to multi-channel communications, how you can use responsive fundraising to be building better relationships with your donors, and how you can use responsive and multi-channel in conjunction with one another to get better donor engagement and better giving, better donor retention and lifetime value. Following that, we're going to do a demonstration of multi-channel communication in Virtuous and how you can easily implement these strategies and tactics to connect with all of your donors at scale. And as always, we're going to have a Q&A time throughout the presentation. So at any time, if you have any questions, go ahead and hit that Q&A button here in Zoom. You can type your question in there and we'll get to it later in the presentation. So now I want to turn it over to Brian to go over a little on responsive fundraising. Brian?
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jeff. And thanks everybody for joining us today. We're really glad to have you. And we're really excited to dive into responsive fundraising and want to paint a powerful picture for you here in the next 20 minutes or so about how being responsive in our communications and in our fundraising is actually at its heart about being multi-channel. And then, like Jeff said, David will take over after you've heard from me for a little bit, and he'll actually show you what responsive fundraising and multi-channel communications and fundraising looks like right within Virtuous. And where I actually want to kick us off is with a story. And I am a fundraiser by trade. I've been fundraising for my whole career, and I started my career at a wonderful nonprofit called Invisible Children. And this lovely group of people that you're seeing here are my former Northern Ugandan coworkers. And what we did at Invisible Children was we were trying to end a child soldier conflict in Central and East Africa. And our communications and the way that we built engagement was at its heart multi-channel. We did things online, in social media, YouTube, email, phone, but we also did a lot of offline engagement. And what these group of Ugandan advocates did was they actually hopped in vans with us, and we would travel across North America, and they would share their story and their experiences, as well as what they were seeing firsthand on what we were achieving on the ground to people all over North America. We'd reached tens of thousands of young people within about a 10-week window. And I had the wonderful opportunity to travel with this guy here, Boney. This is a photo of the two of us together in a high school with a few supporters. And the experience of traveling with Boney was deeply, deeply personal. You know, all of a sudden overnight, this conflict that was happening halfway around the world, you know, I wasn't just advocating for peace in the region. I found myself advocating for someone that had become my friend, someone whom I built a deep friendship and deep trust and deep love with. And it was one of the greatest honors of my life to travel with Boney. And I also went through a bit of a shift. And the shift that I went through as a fundraiser and the realization that I had was that as fundraisers, we're not just funding mission critical revenue. We get to be a part of something really magical and special, which is the transformation of the donor. I got to see young people, supporters, major donors all across North America realize that they had purpose and they had power and they had agency to make a difference in the world. And that was the moment for me where I got to see the layers in which we get to make an impact as fundraisers. And it was really transformational in my lens in terms of how I engage with donors moving forward. And so for me, giving became deeply, deeply personal. And for everyone that engaged with Boney and our Ugandan advocates, our mission became deeply personal. But this also highlighted a challenge that our sector faces. And that's most nonprofits are handcuffed to traditional fundraising systems that are largely impersonal. And ultimately, these models, these traditional old school models of fundraising force us to rely on impersonal, unresponsive fundraising tactics instead of creating deeper connection, instead of, building deeply personal relationships with our donors. We actually, without even being intentional about it, we actually sometimes are alienating our donors. And this is all to say that the days of sending impersonal, direct response marketing and hoping that we get a 3% response rate on an email open, those days are over. The model has become intolerable for our donors, and we need a new approach. We need to reimagine our fundraising. And let's think about all of the ways within this traditional fundraising model that donors come through our door. They're invited by a friend to an event. They see a story that moves them and touches them and resonates with their heart. Maybe it's a peer-to-peer event where you're brought in through a friend. Maybe there's something urgent and newsworthy in the headlines that calls you to action. And another key is, knowing someone that has a personal connection to a cause. And so there are all these pathways in which people come to us, and then we drop them into our November appeal and our year-end campaign. And then they get to subscribe to our new newsletter the next year, and they get a generic stewardship appeal for Valentine's Day in February. And it's largely impersonal. And what we're seeing is that, we are losing 76% of new donors, and we're putting all of these resources into acquiring new donors, and we can't keep them around. And so we're left with, the spray and pray tactics that come along with retention and cultivation aren't working. And one-way communication based on a timeline is leaving us with no mechanism to get feedback from donors, to learn more about their passion, where they are in their own personal journey, and how they want to engage with us. And so it's led us to a generosity crisis. And this crisis is, in the last, year over year, we lose about 50% of our donors. And in the last decade, we've lost about 25% of mid to low level donors. And again, like, donors are opting out because of inappropriate asks, impersonal messages. They have limited transparency, and there's lacking acknowledgement of the true impact that they're making for our mission, our cause. And so overly generic communication is poor and unhelpful. And at the end of the day, we're left in a place today where, 2020, we saw giving go up, but we saw giving go up in our major donor category. And so while we see an increase in giving there, we're losing the everyday mid to low tier donor that can make a huge impact for our cause. And today's donor expects a personal connection to the causes that they care about, because our donors are living in a hyper-connected personal world. Our donors are, they sit down on the couch at night and they turn on Netflix, or they get in their car and they turn on Spotify, and they are getting curated content and experiences based upon their interest that's tailored to them. It's also based on community and how they network and the activities of friends, but also it's two-way behavior. If you watch something on Netflix, you are going to get recommendations based upon that behavior. And there's no reason why nonprofits shouldn't be able to do this as well. We have all of the access to tools and technology for us to be able to create the same tailored, personalized experiences for our donors with our cause and our mission. And there's a way that we can create hyper-personalized connection to our cause and create a more enriching community for our organization. And so our fundraising systems, that most nonprofits are using, were designed for a world that no longer exists. There aren't a lot of systems that exist that allow nonprofits to tap into this hyper personalized activation, communication, and engagement within their fundraising. And so we're left pretty frustrated. Donor retention is well socialized. It's a researched and wrung out topic, but we're not seeing correlated improvements. And here at Virtuous, we sat back and asked why. And so we want to ask two important questions. And those questions are, what can you do to close the gap? And the second question is, how can you overcome the inertia? We do things because that's the way that they've always been done. And that's such a limiting factor. And so what can we do right now today to change? And so there is good news. And what we're seeing here at Virtuous is we're working with nonprofits all around the country and the world that are seeing an increase in donor retention, increase in stewardship, increase in engagement, and an overall increase in generosity because they're building more personalized relationships with their donors. And just as a great reminder, we love this quote here. And, we are living in a time where generosity is on the rise. We look at the trends within social purpose and the way that consumers engage with brands. People are adopting purpose driven lifestyles, everything from the clothes they wear, the food they eat, and the nonprofits that they support. And I think it's a great reminder that, through this quote, that folks are busy, but they're not ungenerous. And this was from the founder of Save the Children. We have to devise means of making known the facts in such a way as to touch the imagination of the world. The world is not ungenerous, but unimaginative and very busy. And so we think about fundraising, we want to think about how can we use systems? We have campaigns and processes, habits, platforms that need to be designed to close the gap between our supporters, our key stakeholders, our volunteers, to our story, our mission, our impact, the purpose that they're having and making in the world, through our organization. And so how are nonprofits accelerating their growth model and closing the gap with the modern donor? It's all about adopting a responsive mindset. And being responsive means that we don't just treat our top 10% of donors like major donors. We need to treat all of our donors like major donors. And here at Virtuous, we believe in the power of combining modern technology with responsive fundraising tactics to personalize engagement for every single donor. And instead of blasting out impersonal mass communication that interrupts our donors and steals their attention, responsive fundraising allows you to combine technology and human connection to foster genuine conversations for all of your donors. And so I want to take a few minutes just to dive into what the responsive fundraising framework looks like. Want to give you a second to digest this framework and these concepts so that you can actually then have that top of mind for when David goes through the demo with you all here in a few minutes. And so the first piece is that we have to be great listeners. We have to ask great questions to our donors. We have to understand, what drives them, what are the data signals, what's motivating our donors, and also what other information is publicly available that can give us a more holistic framework of who our donor is and what their giving capabilities look like and what their interests are. And then we can use those signals through active listening to be able to connect to donors more personally in real time. And we can do this at scale. And it can feel overwhelming, especially for small teams. But the key is that technology can actually help us get time back. And through marketing automation, we can connect with people at scale in a personalized way. And this third piece is suggest. And, we like to use this over the term of asking a donor. We really hold the belief that, we are mentors and coaches that are providing opportunities for donors to step through multiple different pathways. And so it's about asking the right thing at the right time to the right person. And if you can get that suggestion correct, you're going to see an increase in generosity. And then as we repeat, we want to be able to test. We want to be able to look at our data and our analytics. We want to discover what works and what doesn't, and then double down on what does as we go back to listen. And so imagine for a moment, I skipped this. Remember this approach? Everyone comes in through several doorways, and then we drop them into a standard mass communication program. But I want you to imagine for a moment that Lisa's invited to a gala hosted by your nonprofit, and she's invited by a friend. And within 1 hour of registering, Lisa gets a thank you email, but she also receives a survey with 2 questions so that we can better understand her interests. A day later, a member of the development team gets an automated task, and it suggests that they call Lisa and thank her for her registration and thank her for being interested in attending. And then 2 days later, she gets an SMS text from the program team based on her interests that drives her to a landing page on our website. She clicks through and comes to our website. And once she visits our website and spends some time learning and digesting, she'll get an email with a donation ask 1 day later based upon the content that she visited on our website. Lisa makes her first donation, and then 15 days later, she gets a handwritten postcard in the mail, which closes the loop on being able to tell her what the difference is that she made. So this is a multi-channel, personalized communication stream that's based on donor timing, her interest, her intent, and ultimately is multi-channel. And so what if we could do this for all of our donors? What if we could look at a whole series of behavior, whether it's a first-time donation to a water campaign, maybe it's a donor that visits a donation page and abandons the page. Maybe it's a lapsed donor like Lynn, who hasn't given in 13 months, or James, who went to our website through an email and downloaded a PDF. What if we could take these different behaviors and create personalized follow-up through email, direct mail, phone calls, and texting to be able to give a more tailored, personalized experience at scale for not only our donors, but for our prospects, our supporters, our volunteers that are all engaging with us in their own way. And so where this leaves us is we can create responsive dynamic campaigns. And what we're seeing here with our customers at Virtuous is when we no longer have a static single campaign, and we have a campaign that goes to people at an individualized rate, we're seeing an increase in retention, we're seeing an increase in average gift, and we're also seeing an increase in gift amount size. And so this framework at a high level, I'm sure sounds great. So what I want to do real quick is I'm going to go through 3 of these categories, and I just want to let you know like a few things that you can do with your team today, regardless of what software or system you have. There are action steps that we can all take right here and now that'll allow us to be more responsive. And again, David's going to follow up with the demo to show you how this also works in Virtuous. So I want to start with listening. And there's a few great ways that we can listen to our donors to ensure that we're capturing a more holistic view of their interests and what drives them. And the first is creating donor personas. It's a way to begin to segment your donors around intent. A great suggestion would be identify 3 to 5 profiles that make up your donor database. Maybe you have Steve, the young college kid, would be one persona that makes up a large segment of your database. And maybe that's young people that have a lot of great social influence, but not a lot of money to give. Maybe this is a segment that would make, great candidates for peer-to-peer fundraising, where individuals can use social influence to fundraise for you. But then you have Nancy, the mom, who, has giving capacity, but she's really busy. She's tied down with kids, and she's doing a lot of work. So how do we tailor our communication to honor the fact that, Nancy is busy, but also incentivize her to give? Another possible segment could be Susan, the executive. How do we tailor our communications to the interests of an executive level major donor? So by creating these personas, we'll have a better understanding of what our donor file looks like, and to be able to message and engage our file with different opportunities and different content based upon those interests. The other is listening through surveys and third-party data. Something as simple as using SurveyMonkey to profile your donor database, and just trying to get to the heart of how much do people understand our cause? What drives them to give? What is their why? Why are they showing up with you? We could also use third-party data such as social screening, and wealth and relationship data to, again, better understand through publicly available information, what is a donor's giving capacity. And the last is digital behavior tracking. And I'm going to emphasize this in 2020, you should be able to know and see every single click that a donor makes on your website. That's not a nice to have. That is a must have. That is a standard best practice in 2021. And so, your CRM should be able to do this for you. And so, we want to know about all of the behavior and all of the ways that people are engaging with us online. And we should have a full scope into what that looks like. So that's listening within the responsive framework. I now want to go into connecting and how we, after learning more about our donors, how do we connect personally with them in real time? And we can do this through marketing automation. Like I said, the technology that Netflix and the Amazons of the world use is available to you. You can set it and forget it, and it's going to buy you time back. A great example is, when a new donor makes a first-time gift, that should automatically trigger a sequence of communications and events that welcome them to your organization and help highlight the impact that they've made through this first-time gift. Content is another great way to connect with donors, and we want to drive deeper connection by crafting relevant and compelling stories, information, PDFs, videos, experiences, and more. Every touch point shouldn't be an ask. We really want to be using and leveraging content to be able to tell the story that our donors are a part of. And the other big point here is multi-channel, which is what brought us all here today. We want to tell a single story across all of our channels. That includes mail, your website, your email, social media, phone. And this is all about fostering genuine conversations with your donors and making sure that our touch points don't live in silos. Third here is suggest. And this is, again, asking for the right thing at the right time to the right person. And like I said earlier, we like this better than the word ask. We're seeking to build a donor-centric view, and we want the donor to be in control of the choices that they're making. We want to provide ways for donors to engage deeply with us over time where they're choosing in with us. It is a partnership, and we really want it to feel like that. And so a few ways that you can make suggestions is through smart giving options. You can use, with the right technology, you can use donor signals that present smart suggested giving amounts to each donor that increases response rates, but also increases average gift size. We should be able to make asks to our donors at scale that factors in their past giving history. If we have a donor that has given us $250 a year for the last 3 years, we need to make sure that we're making the right ask at the right time. And also, how do we upgrade that donation? And making sure that, we're bringing them along for a deeper, greater journey with us. And that brings us to donor journey mapping and just understanding that every donor's journey is unique. And mapping these journeys and these key milestones that we want donors to engage with us. And that's not just with their wallet. That's with their time, with their talent, with their network. So how do we incorporate non-financial asks into the donor journey that invites them to engage with us at a deeper level that's more meaningful, that again creates this personalized experience with us? And there's unlimited creative opportunities that you can deploy through your organization that creates this experience for a donor. And so as we talk through this framework, this left us here at Virtuous. We saw this generosity crisis. We saw this problem that I mentioned earlier where, we're losing 76, we have a 76% attrition rate. This is a problem. This is a cultural problem that we need to tackle. And knowing that the core of responsive fundraising is a multi-channel approach, and with the success that we were seeing with our customers, we decided that we just didn't want to stop there. We wanted to take an action step to further understand through an observational study how are organizations using multi-channel today to provide further insights into our own observations and success that we're seeing with our customers. So we partnered with NextAfter, and they've helped us validate our observations and get a better index around what are organizations doing to prove this hypothesis that multi-channel responsive fundraising increases revenue, increases average gift size, and increases engagement with our organization. And so there's a full study on this that you can download. I'm actually going to ask Jeff if you could plug the download into the chat. I think that would be awesome. So you can download the full study and see all of the ins and outs of everything that we unearthed. But I want to highlight a few salient points before I hand things over to David to give you a walkthrough of multi-channel and Virtuous. And the first is that how we conducted the study. And one is that we made $20 donations online and offline to 119 organizations. We did this successfully with 102. And when I say we, I specifically mean NextAfter. NextAfter conducted the study. They captured 12 data points on the giving process, the thank you screen and ways to give page, and tracked over 2,200 messages across email, mail, phone calls, and text over a 4-month period, and classified these different communications as either cultivation or solicitation. And NextAfter did a more detailed analysis on 47 direct mail appeals and 64 email appeals. And again, all of the results of this are in the study. It's free for you to download. We'd love for you to check it out. But the salient points that I really want to highlight is, first of all, multi-channel donors are worth more than 3 times that of online only and offline only donors. So I'm just going to repeat that. Multi-channel donors, that's donors that are getting engagement and communication from us online and offline, are more than 3 times more. They're worth 3 times more than offline only and online only. That is a significant increase in generosity when we communicate with donors through multi-channel. The next point is that multi-channel donors, we retain them at a higher rate. Depending on the medium in which we're looking at, multi-channel donors are anywhere between 24 and 31% more engaged with us. We retain 24 to 31% more donors using online and offline communication versus online only or offline only. And the next point that I want to make is that only 3% of nonprofits are using multi-channel. And what NextAfter found through the study is that, we are over-indexing on email. Less than 10% of organizations left a voicemail for either an online or offline donor. And what was even more jaw-dropping was that only 1 organization out of 102 sent a text message. So our donors are being bombarded on email and they aren't being engaged in other mediums, even though we're seeing the results of a 3 times increase in donor value when you communicate across all of these channels and use a multi-channel approach. And so your nonprofit has a choice. And the choice is, will you carry on with the traditional impersonal, static, and siloed approach, or will you implement a responsive approach that's personal, dynamic, and at its heart, multi-channel? And so Virtuous is the only responsive fundraising platform. And today, fundraising requires more than just a traditional CRM. And want to let you know that, we are a suite of fundraising tools and platforms, everything from a CRM to signals that give you data-driven donor insights that allow you to deploy multi-channel automated campaigns at scale to create deeper connection through all of your marketing. And that's email, mail, direct mail, SMS, and that you can create frictionless donation experiences for all of your donors. Awesome. So I'm going to pause here and I'm going to hand it back over to Jeff to see if we want to take any questions before we transition to David with the demo.
Yeah, I think we're going to hold off on questions until the end. So David, if you want to take over the screen share, you can take it from here.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks, Jeff. Yep, happy to get my screen going here. And just so everyone knows, while we're getting screens switched out, if you have questions, the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom window, just drop them in there. We will get to those at the end. So Brian, if you don't mind unsharing, and there we go, I will get my screen going. Okay, so we're going to dive into a couple areas in Virtuous, really thinking through the idea of multi-channel fundraising. But I really did want to just kind of reinforce at first here that we truly believe at Virtuous that giving is personal. And it's one of the most personal and meaningful things someone can do when they give their time, their money, their talent. That is a very deep, meaningful, personal thing. So with that and knowing that, we have the kind of the responsibility to make sure that everything we do honors that fact, that honors the fact that it's a personal act. So not only is giving personal by nature, but think about every other area of your life. So much of our daily experience with brands and as a consumer is trying to make sure that everything we do is personalized. So from Netflix and Amazon, it's just become expected. And nonprofits actually stand the most to gain because the nature of what we do is inherently personal. So it's exciting to be able to do this well. And if we think about the idea of responsive fundraising, it all starts with the idea that we need to be able to listen and understand donors well. Now, we're not going to dive too deep into that today, or we're really going to focus on kind of how Virtuous will help you enable multi-channel. But one thing that's important to know is people are more than just their past giving transactions. If all we know about our donors is how much they've given, then we're essentially treating them like a checkbook. And so Virtuous does bring signals and other data to bear to help you understand the whole person, from who they are socially and where do they live and how do they engage on your website? How are they opening our content? What do they care about? Relationships and passions. We want you to know the whole person as much as you can, because when we start to know them and understand them better, now we can take that great data and use it to create more meaningful connection and relationships. I always like to joke, right? I know my wife better than any person on the planet. And when you know someone well, you have the responsibility to build better relationships, right? Making sure that that gift on that anniversary is not just a blank thank you card, but it's something meaningful, because when you know and understand, you now have that responsibility to make sure that you can then honor that. So let's dive into, though, how does Virtuous help with multi-channel? So first, yes, we are a CRM that's going to help you store all that data, account for all of their giving. But Virtuous is also a full marketing system as well, specifically a full multi-channel marketing system, which is incredibly unique. So I'm going to show a few examples of what this can kind of look like. So I just switched over to the marketing automation side of Virtuous, and we're going to look at kind of two sample workflows that will help us enable us to do multi-channel well. And the first one here is a new donor welcome series. So studies have shown that doing a new donor welcome series will actually increase retention by 50%. And now layering on the study with multi-channel research, if we can do this across multiple channels, so not only are they getting an email, but they're going to get a call, they're going to get a letter, they're going to get a text message, then it's just exponentially better retention. So what we're taking a look at right now is an example of what a new donor welcome series can look like. And we won't get into the depths of how this was created, but I want to show you why and kind of what the process will look like. So essentially, this is a workflow inside Virtuous, and this will trigger these actions below here to happen based on the criteria that we set up. So if we get a first-time donor that comes on file and their gift is under $50, they will have these actions. If it's between 50 and 100, it will have these actions. Over 100, a separate list of actions. And you can see kind of so on and so forth. So as you start to think about, well, how do we want to segment and differentiate? This is up to you. Maybe you have a different giving threshold. Maybe you want to add some other criteria, like what state are they in or what project did they give to? You can use all of the data that we track to create more individual experiences. But for example, let's say a new $25 gift comes in. Well, that donor would then qualify for this bucket right here. And you can see these actions that will start to happen. So Virtuous is going to automatically tag the donor's record as a first-time donor. So the system is going to add that tag and segment the record for you. So you can use Virtuous in this way to automatically segment your database. Then you'll see that one of the first things that will go out is we're going to send them a text message. Now we'll look at the template builder for text messages here in a bit, but just know, right, this might be, hey, we're so thankful you gave. Here's a link to learn more, whatever it might be. Then Virtuous is going to trigger a postcard to be delivered. I'm going to click in here so we can take a look. Now, this is a full editor. You can create letters and postcards inside Virtuous. You can templatize them just like you would with like a normal word editor here, but you see I might have a thank you postcard going out. It's going to drop their name in here when this sends out. But the neat part about this is this doesn't mean that this just prints a postcard on your printer and you have to go run to the post office and drop this off. Virtuous has a service that prints, posts, and delivers these automatically. So you might have dozens of different unique thank you postcards going out every single day based on who the donor is and what they gave to and the amount and whatever else you create. That is something that is nearly impossible to do if you think about the limited amount of time. How could we send individualized, unique letters every single day to dozens and dozens and hundreds of people potentially? So Virtuous is going to trigger this thank you postcard. So John's going to get the text, then he's going to get a couple days later that postcard showing up at his door. Then we're going to wait a day. And then Virtuous is going to say, hey, now let's send another email. Maybe this email encourages them to become a monthly donor, or maybe it's just sharing a story, a video of the impact that their gift is having. And just like any good email editor here, you'll see we can design and build these emails to look and feel exactly like you want. And so now, again, Virtuous has, through automation, triggered a text message uniquely, sent a unique postcard, and then sent an email. And now you can kind of just see the rest, right? We might have several things happening here. One of the things might be, hey, a couple weeks later, we're going to automatically create a task for one of our donor development reps to call them and say thanks, to check in, to understand why they gave. And so each one of these will have uniqueness to it. Maybe the 50 to 100 gets a slightly different message. Maybe, right, at this point, maybe if it's over $100, one of the steps we want to do is actually ask Virtuous, hey, would you go grab that donor's wealth data? And would you please automatically append the wealth data to the record? Because we actually want the system to tell us if a major donor just gave a gift. Maybe that gift was $100, but we find out that they actually have wealth capacity for a $10,000 gift. And the neat part now is Virtuous can tell us that. So automation in this way, right? You can see this is enabling things like multi-channel, unique messaging, designed however we'd like to go out to donors, but it can also do things like update the system for us, alert us when we get major donors in the system. And the whole point here is, right, we want to honor the donors. We want to make sure that they get the best message at the right time that's more designed for them. So again, this is an example of what kind of a unique, customized, new donor welcome series can look like. Now we'll show another one, right? This maybe is set to go off after we finish up our big year-end gala. And so we might want to have a different message go out. And this could be designed based on maybe they attended, maybe they RSVP'd, but they didn't attend, and maybe they attended, but they didn't give, right? You think about the scenario after you finish up a gala. Well, how do we want to follow up with the people who didn't give, or the people who maybe gave multiple gifts or a large gift? Same idea here, except now the criteria is just a little bit different. But again, we're able to enable multi-channel experiences. And so I want everyone to pause and kind of think, well, what are those different milestones in your donor's journey? How do we want to treat them differently? You can start to imagine how automation and Virtuous can help you create those experiences. Now, I can do a lot of things outside. If I just wanted to send a direct email, a direct letter, a direct text message, I could as well. And then here inside Virtuous is where we can do things like build our templatized text messages that might go out. I can send samples, I can test this. And then Virtuous is also releasing features that allow you to do two-way communication. So what happens when they reply? Well, you can start to actually reply back to them within the system. And so our whole goal is, how do we make sure that every donor, no matter who they are, no matter the size of the gift, is honored in such a way, right, to honors the personal nature of their giving? When, of course, right, as fundraisers, we don't have unlimited time in the day. What we want to do at Virtuous is make sure that you, as a fundraiser, can do more things like great calls, great human interaction, the personal side of fundraising, and then have confidence that every single one of the contacts you're not able to make those calls to is still getting a much more engaging, personalized experience. And so we love this because the multi-channel, of course, is going to help increase retention. It honors the personal nature of giving. It allows you as a fundraiser to do more of the work you love to do and less of the manual stuff you don't. And ultimately, at the end of the day, right, creates an experience that is honoring of the donor. So I'm going to hand it back to Jeff and Brian. We'll hop into questions, but again, want to make sure if you have more questions or want to see more, reach out to us. We can dive in and do very deep, unique experiences, kind of customize this and walk through this together. All right, so Jeff and Brian, I'm going to pass it back.
Yeah, thanks, David. And we do have a couple of questions here. Actually, the first one is maybe best for Brian. With time and resources being tight, how would you recommend getting started with multi-channel to have the biggest impact?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say there's a few layers to this question, and part of it does depend on what technology do you have here and now? And I'd say, the first question I would ask is, where can you automate to help save you time? You might have to take more time today and tomorrow to set a few things up, but does your current, platforms and systems allow you to create some automation? That way, for example, we had mentioned a new donor welcome series, for example, knowing that we do have a 76% attrition rate with new donors, that might be a number one priority to say, okay, let's make sure we get some engagement set up and automated so that, so that we're communicating, thanking, highlighting impact, and bringing new donors deeper into the fold with us. So that's one piece that I would add. So it's a little dependent on, what you have access to right here and now. I would also just say that, there's a lot of value in just slowing down just enough to speed up to say, what can I do right now today that makes a difference? And, and what can I do in an hour that makes a difference? And that might be, looking at, donors that have given over the last month or two and saying, who can I call in the next 60 minutes? And, every little bit that you push the needle forward makes a huge difference. Maybe they received a thank you email and a receipt, but have you called them? Also, have you tried personally texting them, right? Like, what are the various methods that you're currently using? And what can you do now that just helps move things down the line a little forward, that's meaningful, that's personal? And I'd also say, when you're following up with donors, like, be really intentional about how you're curating connection with them. Make sure you say thank you. Something that we saw in the multi-channel study that you'll see if you download it is the amount of organizations that pick up the phone and don't even say thank you was pretty jaw-dropping to us. And so lead forward with your heart and think about what you can do today and tomorrow. What are the little actions that make a big difference?
Yeah, that's great. I really like the idea of kind of starting simple, starting with something small that you can expand upon. Finding that thing, what can I do over the next 60 minutes or the next day that's going to have a big impact? So I really appreciate those insights. And David, we've got a couple of questions here on kind of additional channels. So, is Virtuous integrated with anything like a ringless voicemail delivery?
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently we don't have ringless voicemail built into automation, although it is something that we have talked about. And the good thing about Virtuous is we move and develop and create pretty fast. And so we're always kind of thinking 5, 10 years ahead. And that is actually something we've been talking about. And for sure, that is core to what we want to do. And we believe that, just more channels, more ways to create a better experience will be needed. So currently not today, but it's definitely being thought about.
Yeah, thank you. And could you touch, David, on something we've heard before in the past about how, isn't automation just kind of replacing people? Like it isn't fundraising about personal connection and relationships. How can automation fit in that paradigm when fundraising is about people?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think there's, definitely some, some schools of thought out there. I think what we want to stress with the idea of automation is it's both and. It's not either or. It's not either we do automation or we make personal calls. It's both. And I like to give the example of what about that $5 donor who gave a $5 gift and maybe contributes $5 a month. That might be the most that they can contribute, and what they are doing is one of the most meaningful things in their personal life. But yet, right, if we tend to look at how much time we have in the day, we tend to focus most of our personal efforts on large donation givers, the ones who tend to have more financial capacity. And so what automation allows you to do is, one, create a better multi-channel experience for everyone, but frees you up to make sure that you can still have those great personal calls, but the folks who maybe you're not going to get that time to reach to, they still get an experience that's beyond just a monthly newsletter, beyond just the quarterly appeal, but something that is tied back to their giving. Maybe they supported a certain cause, or maybe they've been a giver for a long time. We want to recognize them on their birthday. We want to make sure that we say thank you on their giving anniversary. It's really hard to do when you have thousands, potentially tens of thousands of folks that look just like that. How can we honor them better? And a big part of that is creating good multi-channel experiences using the data we know to create more meaningful, personalized messages. And Virtuous, I believe, allows you to do more personal phone calls and meetings and lunches because you're not stuck doing a bunch of manual work. Virtuous is going to alert you, hey, it's time to make that call. This is the best ask. This is the right person. And even your own fundraising focus can be supported by data and supported by alerts that give you the right focus.
Yeah, thank you. And the last question that I see here is around pricing. So with letters on demand or direct mail letters and postcards and SMS and email, how does Virtuous price all of that in our packaging with nonprofits?
Yeah, that's a great question. So across email and SMS and letters, there is a base level of some of that included with each of the subscriptions. Now, we have some customers that will utilize much more. And so you do have the ability to kind of grow. If you say you send, over 10,000 text messages a month, you can buy into larger packages where it's reduced cost. And so really it's just going to be based on volume. Generally, there's a level included, but then after that, there's just a cost per piece. If you tend to send a lot of one or more than the other, there are volume discounts as you grow and are sending more. But ideally, right, if you're looking at other SMS providers or even direct mail providers, the pricing should be comparable. Obviously, with letters and whatnot, you're going to have the cost of postage and materials all just kind of built into a single cost per piece. So I think the idea, right, is kind of looking at how much time, how much effort, how much money would it take you to kind of do this multi-channel experience without a single system. And usually 99% of the time, say probably 100% of the time, Virtuous is going to be a lot more reasonable.
Well, thank you so much, David. And thank you again to all of you for carving out time in your day to join us and learn more about being responsive to your donors, particularly around multi-channel. Virtuous has an offer for you now. If you wanted to get a custom multi-channel workflow built specific for your organization, reach out to us. We'll make that part of the discovery process where we're going to build a customized demo for your organization and the things that you're specifically trying to solve. So if you go to virtuous.org/demo, reach out and schedule time with our team. We'll make sure to build that customized workflow according to your organization and the things that we're trying to solve. Again, we thank you for your time and showing up here today. And we hope you have a great rest of the week. Thank you.